What he did, it was pretty treacherous.
His father has a big role to play. And by doing what he's doing, he's undermining not only his country, not only his father as a father, but the king.
It got it all wrong. I mean, people just automatically turned against him again. All he needs to do is say sorry, and he's not going to do it again.
Even if there was an attempt at reconciliation with private conversations, you can't trust him, and those conversations would probably become public. He's done so much damage. He's criticised the Queen, the King's wife. He's attacked his brother, called his brother a bully, attacked his brother's wife. And what does he expect?
I think things are changing in Montecito. I think, he realises, what he's lost.
In 10 years' time, this girl's going to be over every magazine. She's going to be a superstar,
Yeah.
There is never a dull week here at Royal Exclusive, and today we will be asking, has Prince Harry set fire to the olive branch tree with his incendiary interview after his security case defeat? Have Prince William and Prince George shown us during VE Day commemorations the future of the royal family is in safe hands? And on the 2-year anniversary of the King's coronation, what has gone right, what has gone wrong, and where do we go from here? Joining me today is the Sun's legendary royal photographer, Arthur Edwards, and royal author, Robert Jobson. All right, Robert, I'm going to start with you. As I explained just then, has Prince Harry ruined any chance of reconciliation with the King? Has he set fire to any olive branches that may well have emerged from Buckingham Palace after this BBC interview following his security case defeat?
Well, I hope not, but I fear he has. I mean, I thought it was quite an emotional outburst that he came out with, but I do think that he made a mistake in what he did. I know that he used to get on very well with his father, probably better than with William, but this is all now past. I think that it must be very sad for his father to have him lobbing these grenades all the time, particularly when he's going through his chemotherapy, and would have probably, without doubt, actually would have wanted his son to be supporting him during this time. But yeah, it's too much. The way that he behaves, you can't. The big problem here with Harry is, even if there was an attempt at reconciliation with private conversations, you can't trust him, and those conversations would probably become public. So it's difficult.
The most staggering thing was, but on the day of his interview, so we had the result come through around midday. We were told that he'd lost the case; it wouldn't go any further. We had whisperings. We had the palace telling us, or sources at the palace telling us, if the prince in California, if he moves forward sensibly, stop criticising the king, saying that the king should have helped him out with this security case, there is a way forward. The king might start answering calls. Although the door was shut, the key had not been thrown away. There was an opportunity there for Harry, and he seems to have lost it with that interview, Arthur.
Well, I think if he'd have said in that interview, "I'm sorry, Dad, for what I've done," I think that would have helped. I think then the king would have probably said, "OK, let's have a chat," because all he needs to do is say sorry, and he's not going to do it again, not going to betray the royal family again, and he would have got something. But all that said, it's a stitch up, and my father won't talk to me over this security case. It got it all wrong. I mean, people just automatically turned against him again. If it's very difficult sometimes to say the word sorry, but if you've got to do it, and if he's genuinely sorry, and I think he is, I think by that making that interview, he realises that this is going nowhere. His future's going nowhere. It's all very well riding around America, picking up awards, but it's not what he's really good at. He's good at his best was when he was a member of the royal family, and working for the royal family. And I say it's a hard word sometimes to say, but sorry would have been the right word in that interview.
In the interview he gave just after the security case, he said, the king doesn't talk to me. I don't speak to my father. Is King Charles right over the last couple of months?
Well, what could he do, Matt? What could he do? Because the fact is the case was ongoing. If he had made any remark, whatever, I mean, this would have bound to come up because it's obviously been a bone of contention. If he had made any remark, then Harry would have passed it to his legal team, and it could have caused constitutional problems because the king cannot intervene in this instance. It has to be dealt with by the Home Office. It has to be dealt with by Scotland Yard. So I just think that he's been incredibly naive, if he has been naive. The other thing is, as Arthur said, he only has to say sorry. But again, we get this sort of backhanded attempt at it when he says, "I forgive them for what they've done," which is ridiculous. And then he starts blurting out and creating a headline. He knows what he says creates headlines about the state of his father's health. I don't know how much longer the king's got left.
Has he broken protocol here, or is he just suggesting, well, I don't actually know how much my father's got left because no one will talk to me?
I would think it's impossible for him not to know more information than we know, because even though he is out in the cold, he's still got connections with his cousins, he's still got connections with friends that are around the royal family. And so I'm sure that he is aware of a lot of things that's going on. And he's probably very worried, I should think, about his dad. But at the same time, he's done so much damage. He's criticised the Queen, the King's wife. He's attacked his brother, called his brother a bully, attacked his brother's wife. And what does he expect?
And when he had the chance to sort of correct a lot of it, he didn't do that. He didn't say, look, I probably got that wrong, Dad, you know, and I'm sorry, William. I mean, you know, what he did, it was pretty treacherous, and, you know, but everything can be forgiven if you're really, truly sorry and you're not going to do it again. But, you know, he's married to Meghan, and Meghan, you know, she's doing her own thing now. She says she's the happiest she's ever been. Harry, to me, looked sad.
He looked very miserable, didn't he? And also, the thing is, you can understand his sort of, you know, it's not paranoia, I suppose, is a bit strong, but, you know, this is a guy that lost his mother. He blames the media for the way that she died, the intrusiveness that he experienced when he was a kid. He has a lot of issues with privacy, he has a lot of issues with security, and, you know, I can sort of get that, actually. But at the same time, there are solutions to this. And he's just spent a lot of money, you know, millions of pounds, which could have been actually directed in another way in organising a better system for security.
But the thing is, Robert, when we were on the road with Harry, we never got that feeling that he hated the press then. He was very cooperative with the press.
Yeah, he was quite chippy. Yeah,
and we used to go to the pub with him and have a drink with him, and he would say...
But he was always...
And he was different then. He's not... Since he married Meghan, he changed. And suddenly he became into.
I actually think he's.
I think he was fine till then. When he was working for the royal family, he was fantastic.
To a degree, I think he always had an edge, but I do think that.
I never found it.
Well, he did certain things, didn't he? There was things I remember he did with you that you didn't particularly like. He was quite, you know, disrespectful at times, I think.
Well, I think there's most definitely
I didn't find that. I found, like, I remember once going to Lesotho with him, you know, and
no, that's good. But I remember that time he put his hand on the paint on your head.
I saw it was, yeah, but you know, that was because I'd gone on television that morning and said he was going bald. He was having a bit of own back. That was fun. When we washed up together, we laughed about it.
I don't know. I think he always had an issue. I think he always had
I think there's always been an
underlying issue.
There's a post-2016, a kind of post-Duchess of Sussex arriving on the scene where lots of issues have changed and lots of problems that Harry has have really come to the fore since then. There's definitely, I feel agree there's a change in his
personality. But I don't blame her entirely for that.
Rob, you mentioned about winners and losers. I mean, Harry did say, I think that people will celebrate this certain people will celebrate this as a win. Are there any winners and losers in this case? Because the royal family still aren't talking. It's still on the headlines. The only winners possibly are the lawyers in this.
Well, the lawyers always win, but I do think that no, there's no real winners and losers. I'm still slightly concerned by the whole thing because, you know, the reality is, you know, should anything happen to Harry, then, you know, I think a lot of people will be sitting there analysing this case, and they'll be looking at things that could have been done and could have been done to protect him. But he is living abroad. You know, he is, albeit the second son of the king, but he's decided to walk away, and he's no longer a working royal and therefore no longer a public figure. As Arthur said right at the beginning, that the taxpayers should be forking out to protect. And I think that's probably right.
Arthur, you're very fond of the king and you've been working with him for decades. It's a difficult question to answer, but how do you think he would be feeling after this court case is finished, thinking, well, there may be a chance now for me to be allowed, you know, to speak to my son. The legal case is over. How do you think he feels after finding out that his son, within hours, goes on the BBC and starts saying all this nonsense?
I'd be worried about it still because, you know, the thing why they won't speak to him is because all the conversation could go out on another TV show. I mean, he wants some assurances from Harry that it's all going to stop. He wants a genuine apology. And he's entitled to that. And so is William. And so is William. You know, William and Harry were so close all their life. Everything they did together. They went and they did everything together. They were so close. And now something must have happened that seriously happened, that William just can't stand him anymore. And that's just so sad. But, you know, I do believe in I believe in the prodigal son. You know, you can say, I'm sorry, and repent and promise not to do it again. And I'm sure the King and William will say, OK, let's give it another try.
Yeah, but he's got to trust him. And this is, I think
this is the thing. This is what he's got to show that.
The trust is
He's got
gone,
to stop this talking out about stitch-ups and things like that.
But it's almost, isn't it?
I'm sorry, you know, Papa, I'm sorry. I want to come back. I want to see you. I want to be with you.
So
I want
is
to
the way
spend some
forward?
time with you, but it's not happening.
So is the way forward? We're taking a step back from this. Is a way forward is still that Harry? We need an apologetic Harry, a kind of
a straightforward apology,
a straightforward apology from Harry.
Yeah.
But this seemed to be a bit old school. This interview that we were watching the other day, it seemed to return to the days of the Oprah Winfrey interview or his book, The Spare, or the Netflix series. He hasn't done that for a couple of years.
It was navel-gazing again.
This is a return to angry Harry. It's not welcome, is it?
Well, he can't get through. He can't get through, and that's what's just upsetting him. He can't get through to speak to his father. And the last time he really did manage to get and speak to him, I suppose, was when he flew over. But what's very sad is the King is still undergoing chemotherapy. It's it's a very, very difficult time. He's doing his best to carry out all his engagements. And, he's lost the support of one of his sons at the time he needs them.
Oh, yeah.
And it must be a terrible pain. I should think, as a dad, the last thing you want to do is fall out with your kids. And this is very difficult. Who makes the first move? I really don't know how the King can make the first move unless he can trust his son. And at the moment, we've not seen any evidence as to why he should.
Well, he's an incredibly busy man, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and we'll get onto later with the VE Day commemorations and everything that he's doing. This is something that's not needed in his life, and it could have been resolved. I think if Harry hadn't have done that BBC interview, we could have had steps forward.
Well, if he'd have done that BBC interview and he'd have said, "Pop, I'm sorry," that would have been worthwhile doing that interview.
And only say that. And only say that. Don't whinge on
don't go on about stitch-ups.
Don't stitch up. Just say, I've got it wrong. I'd like to see my dad. He's not well.
I mean, he was taking off on the government, and he was taking on the royal family going to try and get that security. It was only an appeal. We'd already been told no, but he was fighting on about it. It's cost him a lot of money, and in fact, he's lost. Sometimes you just have to accept you lose in life and not just go on about stitch-ups and things like that. He should have said, "Sorry, Papa.
Got it
I'm
wrong.
so sorry. Please let me come and see you."
I've sat through many of those court cases, and there's never been one moment that I thought Harry might win this case. It's been rumbling on for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Very poor advice then, wasn't it?
And it's not just the poor advice. I think with the court case, where people have been, there has to be people around Harry now that are looking out for his best interest. And that interview wasn't. That might have been what he wanted, but it wasn't in his best interests.
No, but it was clearly what he was wanting to do. He wanted again. He lost the case, so he wanted to have his 5 minutes. Talking about the case, but also, again, raising issues that he feels that he needs to deal with. But as the Sun said on the front page, he's lost it. And I think he showed that he completely lost it. He had no real understanding anymore, I think, of how the British people, who, after all, he's asking to pay the bill for his security, feel about him. And ultimately, with Harry, he seems to be. I don't know what he does anymore. As you say, he goes around collecting awards and whatever. What does he do? He must be sitting in the kitchen, listening to talking it over with Meghan, talking nonsense. I mean, they really should get and understand that they've really got to do quite a lot to win back the favour of the British people and the royal family.
Well, one thing that he did do you pointed out a story on the front page of the Sun, our headline, but on the Sun on Sunday over the weekend, we did report that when he was over. Last May, he actually, although he's complaining about needing 24-hour taxpayer-funded police security, he did visit a very posh friend's house in West London, and they ordered a Deliveroo driver, which I think in the US they call it DoorDash. Yeah. They take and main huge VIPs and politicians and celebrities don't have delivery drivers coming to their door, because it's a major security issue. So I mean that there are questions whether he genuinely takes this whole case seriously. But there we go.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Matt, I think he was angry after he lost the case, and a lot of that went into the interview, and he should have perhaps thought about it for 24 hours.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, it was a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, knee-jerk. And I think he'll regret it, especially that when he said, "I don't look, now my father's got to live." I mean, that wasn't good.
No.
how long he's got left, and that's pretty bad. You don't do that when someone's got cancer. You don't talk like that about when someone's got cancer. You just hope they're going to get better.
If Megxit hadn't happened, okay, or if Harry was still here and still working, I know it did. Harry would have been central, possibly, at the VE Day commemorations. So it's 80 years since the end of the war, end of the Second World War. It's been a spectacular couple of days. We've been out reporting on it and been in some wonderful places. The key, or the most interesting event, I think, of the last couple of days was Prince William bringing Prince George to the tea party at Buckingham Palace. There were lots of other royals there. The King was there, the Queen was there, Edward was there, Sophie was there. But how important was that outing, do you think, for young Prince George?
I think one of William's main jobs in life is to train George to be a king, like Prince Charles trained William. And I think that's the start of it. This is what you've got to do, son, And I think, all right, he takes him to Aston Villa with him. He's now obviously a dyed-in-the-wool Aston Villa fan. That's the normal way. That's the procedure. George now is the number one. Whether he likes it or not, he's destined by accident of birth to be our king one day, and he's got to be trained for that. And it takes a lot of training, I can assure you.
I think for continuity, it was great as well because, of course, with the VE Day, with no longer having Her Majesty, the late Queen here, who had the monarch to serve, who had served in uniform. I thought that it was very important that they showed that continuity. I think it was you interviewed one of the guys that was a centenarian who said, it's wonderful that he's got that link to the past, and it is important because, with the royal family, that one day he'll be titular the head of the armed forces. So I think it is important that it has that link with the past. And I thought they all looked. I think George personally, he performed brilliantly at the Coronation. And he just seems to have been grown into that role. And to have William and Catherine guiding him the way they are, just enough, giving him enough exposure, giving the media enough exposure, is very, very positive.
And he's very much like William was when he was aged. He was shy, nervous about it. William was very shy, didn't want to do it. William hated pictures and everything like that. And then William has turned into be not only a great member of the royal family, but a great statesman overseas.
Catherine was watching him all the time as well, there wasn't she? So.
But he is the main person. Look, whether you like it or not, this is the way it is. He's the eldest son or the eldest child, and he will be the next monarch after William. And of course, the training is so important. Not only, as Robert said, he's got to go into the army, he's got to go to the Air Force, he's got to go into the Marines, and the Navy, all these things he'll have to serve, and he'll have to go to business school to learn how to run these, enormous, like the Prince's Trust, those things, and the... and of course, Duchy of Cornwall, he'll become that, all these things have just got to be done, but, slowly, and that's what taking him to meet those veterans. He'll know that when he becomes a member of the army. He'll remember those people. And,
but it's also that ability to interact, and I think he showed... he's certainly come on quite a lot, I think, in the last couple of years. He was, looking the older guys in the eye, he was speaking slowly so that they could hear him.
He was asking some great questions. He was asking them to show an interest.
Prepared and linked. And I think that's so important because, let's be honest, how many kids when we were 11 years old will be going up to some people and doing these things, although they do a lot of that stuff in schools now where they visit
Also,
places.
I think VE Day was about the veterans as well.
It really was.
They were the stars.
It was the last one, wasn't it, really?
It was, and they were the stars of the whole event, in my view, because, I've been out sort of interviewing and photographing some of these veterans, and some of their stories are amazing. That chap who was sitting next to Catherine in the stand, just a terrific man, Bernard Morgan, his name was, and he was in the RAF and he was at D-Day, and he was a ticket office clerk at a railway in Crewe, and he went off and did that and came back and became a ticket office person at Crewe for the rest of his life. But they went and gave everything.
People.
They
Amazing.
laid their life. They put their life on the line for the country. They were prepared to sacrifice their life for this country. Just think about that. And in my view, they were the stars. They were the stars. And, Harry, when we go back quickly to Harry, he served 2 terms in Afghanistan. He's got the medals to prove it, And quite honestly, I think he would have loved that. He would have loved being with those veterans. He would have absolutely loved
Maybe there was a degree of that bitterness in what he gave that interview with the BBC, a sense, again, he wasn't there. And he knows he should be there. And really, you know, a lot of people blame Meghan for a lot. I don't blame her at all. I don't really. I think he's got to be man enough to make his own decisions. And some of the decisions he's made have been absolutely got wrong. And the biggest, really, nobody said you shouldn't go away and have a private life. But if he hadn't done the book and if he hadn't done the Oprah interview, there's no doubt, in my view, that he'd have been invited back to do certain things.
And particularly the VE Day would have been, for him, that would have, not for us or anything, the royal family,
For him,
but for him to be at the VE Day would have been very important.
And a lot of the guys he served with,
proud.
you know, I've spoken to the guys he served with, people that his fellow officers who did those 2 tours with him, fellow soldiers, you know, had a lot of respect for him. And that, to me, is a real shame for him.
Yeah.
You mentioned about William taking young George to Aston Villa games, and honestly, the pictures and the video don't do justice to how great George and William were in that room, and Catherine as well. William often had his arm on his shoulder, reassuring arm, pat on the back, taking him to speak to the veterans. But are we seeing with William and George possibly a kind of closer demonstration of closeness with the father and son than we have in previous generations?
Let me think. Well, Prince Charles didn't have a great. I mean, Prince Philip sent Charles to the wrong school. He hated the school. Maybe that was wrong, but you know, I mean, I remember seeing pictures of Philip taking Charles to school for the first day, you know, and things like that. I mean, the first child that ever went to a first member of the royal family who went to university was Charles. So I suppose it must have been. I mean, but it wasn't Philip that it was the Queen that Charles learned all it from. You know, learned how to become a good king from her, because you know, since he's become king, I think he's brilliant. I think he's just like. He's like the Duracell bunny. He never stops. He's day after day, work after work, travelling everywhere. He's going to Canada at the end of the month just for one day to open Parliament, the Canadian Parliament. I mean, he's an incredibly hard man, but he got trained well. You know, he knew exactly what he had to do, and I think that's William's job. William will be a good king, and I think he's got to make sure George is, and that's the reason he's there with him, and you'll see more of it as well. I mean, Catherine has that same relationship with her daughter. I mean, that picture she put out last week, there was a stunning picture, you know, that just showed the turn around, darling, bosh, lovely picture, you know.
This is for her birthday.
Yeah,
birthday
picture, yeah, it was a super picture.
And on VE Day, I mean, whenever there's these royal events, whether it's Coronation or the Platinum Jubilee, a lot of the cameras are trained on Louis, because he gives us probably the most entertaining pictures and his facial expressions, and he was quite entertaining. I think he was quite. It was nice seeing that kind of family unit. Are we in danger of forgetting Charlotte, because her birthday was on the same day as the security case dropped? Normally her picture would be everywhere. It was kind of relegated a little bit back. Are we? We're spending a lot of time talking about George and the father-son relationship there with the future king, then future king training the future king. We talk lots of images of Louis. Did we forget about Charlotte?
I think they're quite keen for us to not be overly focused on Charlotte. I mean, the reality is, let's face it, in 10 years' time, this girl's going to be over every magazine. You know, she's going to be a superstar, you know. Yeah. So I think that, you know, I know that when there was a cover on a magazine quite recently, which was to do with Charlotte, was put on the front, and I don't think they were very happy. So letters followed. So I do think they're quite keen to be in control of the way.
There is a management.
And I think that's fair. I think given that they do give a fair amount of exposure of the children, that those children are not overwhelmed by what happens.
But I was photographing that event and watching them, and and Charlotte and Catherine were talking a lot together, and I remember I got one particular picture where she's putting her arm around Charlotte, you know, and but I think Robert's right, you know, she is going to be a megastar, you know, she's just a lovely kid, and yeah, but Louis was the picture. I mean, you're right about that. Louis,
well, he was mocking his brother with his hair.
Mocking the brother with the hair. That's
my favourite moment.
Oh yeah, I mean
that was very funny though.
But that's like two brothers in any family.
But that was funny, because he was saying,
and
"Who
of
do you
course,
think you are?"
On the balcony as well. You know, we was watching him because the last time he was on the balcony with the Queen, he was the star. He almost took the whole event away from the Queen with his antics. But no, he's getting a lot better. But you know, even then, during when he was sitting there with his father was talking to him all the time, you know, reassuring him, and you know, he was like dusting his father's jacket, and he was pulling the braid off his father's, you know. But William was concentrating all about looking after Louis that day. I remember it was just all over him. Yeah.
We're seeing more and more from California. We're seeing more and more pictures being used by mainly Meghan of Archie and Lilibet. They're being used a little bit more. Are they managing in the same way, do you think, Rob?
One day we might see their face.
One day.
I mean, we've got pictures of backs of heads again with the sun setting, and it's a lovely picture. But
we heard Lilibet's voice the other day, I think maybe for the first time.
It was her voice. I think it's all a bit affected. Just if you want a photograph and you're going to kids are going to be in it, just don't make it so affected, really. You know, just take a picture and get on with it. I find it all a bit contrived, really.
I think if you hide things, you kind of make that more valuable.
You're making it intriguing, you increase the value of that. Well, maybe that's what they're trying to do, increase the value of the brand. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think Robert's right. I think they're maybe because they don't feel the children should faces to be shown for security reasons. Who knows? But I think Meghan uses the children when it suits her. I think Harry just enjoys the children. You know, probably. I mean, when he's with children, Harry becomes a child, so I imagine he really enjoys his time.
Well, the thing is, Arthur, I mean, this is a guy, when he was young, he didn't like his picture taken that much, Harry. No. And you've got to remember, there's a complete difference between the two here. You know, he didn't like the photographs. He hated the fact there's cameras around him and stuff. Meghan spent her life trying to get cameras around her.
Yeah, she did.
You know, to become famous, to get the cameras, have interest in her. So they come from a completely different...
That's a really good point. She's always wanted to be a celebrity.
She's the one who wanted to be the star. He didn't want the picture, so you're going to come at different angles.
And you can see that in the kind of Instagram post, because it's Meghan that's putting the pictures out of the children, albeit, as you say, from behind, or doing the videos of the children. You don't get any of that from Harry.
No, not from him. And also, I remember William, when he was a little boy, saying, I hate photographers, you know. I mean, they got every reason to, because they were...
They didn't really understand what was going on. But the fact is, their mother didn't like it. Liked it when she liked it, but didn't like it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Diana didn't mind. She
played the game.
Yeah, she played the game, yeah.
But I think with Meghan, though, I mean, the problem I feel that they've got, Meghan and Harry, is that they, you know, I don't really know what they actually do, you know, because all this jam-making stuff, it's a load of old nonsense, really, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's not going to be... Anyway, the reality is they spend a lot of time, I think, analysing each other and what their issues are, and it always seems to be the case when you come out with these interviews that they're over analysing everything, and they just don't seem to be very light-hearted about anything. It's always got to be an amazing moment or a big interview. You just want them to chill out for a little bit, you know.
Sorry.
So I was just going to say, just quickly going back to that interview, one thing he did say in that, Harry, I want a reconciliation. And I don't think he would have said that a year ago. You know, I think things are changing in Montecito. I think, you know, he realises, you know, what he's lost, really. In fact, he was a great person here. He was somebody here. He was a prince of the realm. He was
that's right.
a very important person. And now he's just another celebrity in America. And,
well, the issue is he probably misses his life in the UK, or aspects of it, but I'm not entirely sure the UK misses him and aspects of him.
Yeah, I mean, Meghan is an American and she loves America, and I can understand that. But he is not.
It lacks purpose. I think that...
Yeah, exactly. You know, what does he do all day? That's what worries me.
You know, he was somebody who did actually have something to give. The fact that he set up the Invictus Games, what he was doing with that was very, very good. With the royal title and the royal influence around it, he was getting so much more done. And I just think he lacks the purpose that
everywhere
for him. And something that she never really... I mean, we talk about her wanting this HOH title and that. She didn't really do anything as HOH. She literally was there 1 minute and gone the next. Oh, no. You know, whereas he actually put in the hours and did work for and was very well received in the Caribbean and other places.
Everywhere.
So I just think he is the one who's lost here. Yeah. And it's a sadness to me, because, you know, even though we had his ups and downs with the media, he actually gave something to the whole royal the royal story, and he was a major part of it. And at the moment, what does he do?
We mentioned about, you know, V-Day commemorations and whether if Harry was still a working royal, whether he could have been involved. It's been an amazing couple of days, and it's still going on this week. Can I ask what your highlights have been of the VE Day commemorations so far?
Well, for me, it's all about the veterans. I mean, though looking at those elderly men and women on the stage with the royals, and the fact that the royals spent most of the time not watching the parade so much, although the king was saluting a lot, but talking to these lovely veterans, and that to me was the sort of highlight. And I was watching it very closely through my lens, and they were joining. I remember, one man showing Catherine his wartime pictures, and she was, really sort of engaging with him. They were the stars, and I'll never forget that moment, and they will never forget it too, because the march past was just went on forever, but for me it was all about the veterans. Yeah.
Now, it's not only VE Day commemorations, 80 years from the end of the Second World War, but it's also 2 years since the King's coronation.
Yeah.
Have you seen the portraits, Robert, that they've got? So these are in the National Gallery, then they're going to hang in, I believe, in the throne room in Buckingham Palace.
That's right,
But there's been a bit of debate as to whether they are, a monstrosity or whether they are actually a masterpiece.
I don't think they're a monstrosity. I think the King's one is a different style, but I personally liked it, and I think it was it captured him. I think it was not the immaculate style that some might like. I think that the one of the Queen was very flattering picture.
Very flattering of the Queen, absolutely,
sure very happy with that. But they both picked their artists. I think they were quite keen on what they were going to do. But I thought they were both, when they unveiled it together, I think it was quite interesting, and both of them were good likenesses. And I think people forget that it's not a paint. It's a painting. It's not a photograph. It's a painting, and so it has to be interpreted.
It's a tradition that's gone back hundreds and hundreds of years that after the King and Queen are crowned, that they have these portraits. So it's something that this country's been doing for centuries. But did you notice, I only really found out yesterday, but it might have been something that just hadn't been announced, that Queen Camilla's crown, which was the 1911 Queen Mary crown, I might get this wrong, it was restyled, there were amendments to it. It's now called the Queen Camilla crown. So it's now going to be on display at the Tower of London, but it's now the Queen Camilla crown, Arthur. Are you happy with that?
Well, yeah, of course, and I'm also quite impressed with Robert's interpretation of the painters, because Robert's quite a good artist himself, and has got many paintings in his house by himself, which I think are quite good. So when he made that kind of eloquent description, I thought that was coming from a good artist himself. Yeah,
Very kind.
It was true. You're very good.
I mean, it's as I say, it's 2 years since we were all there at Westminster Abbey for that day. It's probably the right time to just have a little stop, think, and wonder: has there been any major successes, any major failures in the last 2 years, or what are the biggest challenges that the King has faced? There's been a lot. There's been obviously Harry and Meghan, challenges-wise. There's been Andrew, and there's also been his cancer. What do you think's been his biggest challenge?
Well, obviously the cancer is the biggest.
Cancer,
but I think to start with the positive stuff, it was that the King, the King's visits that he's made. I think that the fact that he's been able to do those, the fact that he's been getting on in transforming the way that Buckingham Palace works, the household. Some of these big receptions that he's been doing, utilising Buckingham Palace, and so more people are going to the palace to experience the whole thing. From the media to people who with cancer, and that he's been doing these major events with a lot of people coming into the palace
And also,
and opening it up, and I think that's been positive.
What's impressed me about him as well is that every country he's been to and overseas, certainly in Europe, he's spoken at the Parliament in the language of the country, and that takes an awful lot of effort. Even when we were in Italy recently, in Rome, even on the morning of that, he was still rehearsing his Italian, so that's kind of impressive. And the ovations he's getting from the parliamentarians.
But his speeches are quite strong.
And they're strong, but they're also
Germany,
great,
France, they're
great humour as well. In Italy, I asked an Italian reporter there, what's his accent like? He said it's very good. And so he puts massive effort into that. And the standing ovation he gets at the end of it from the parliamentarians is quite incredible.
But I think that what's happened as well with the King and the circumstances around the world at this time, because the world has changed since Elizabeth II passed. And I think the fact that he's prepared to take a chance politically as well, because he is a political figure as well as a constitutional monarch, and the situations such as with inviting to see Zelensky after the fallout with Trump was quite a statement, I think, by a British monarch. And I think he's shown that also his associations after all the statements coming from America by Trump about Canada. Again, a close associate is flying out specifically to Canada. He's meeting, having a lot to do with Canada. So I think he's making his presence felt on the political stage as well.
This is really interesting because as I was talking about earlier, we dwell on Andrew, Harry, cancer, but there are so many positive things that the King has achieved in the 2 years since his coronation.
You were in Dubai for the COP and were following him around all that time. I was there too, but you were right up close, and he was behind the scenes meeting all sorts of very important leaders to deal with the issues that were going on in Palestine. So he's very much, I think, stepped it up a little bit in terms of his presence and his role as a statesman since the passing of Elizabeth II. I think that certainly, to me, has been something a very big positive, because in this world that we live with so many varying levels of statesmen around the world, this is a man that's been around for a very, very long time. He's had associations with people going back many, many years. And you do need leaders, and he is a leader, of that experience on the world stage at a time of such transition.
These are really good points, and I completely agree with you. And I go back to my point again. It is a shame that we have a son giving interviews about a security case that really kind of diminishes and takes away the attention from what the King is actually doing. That's the point.
Harry to think a little bit. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he's not as.
He's not the sharpest.
I was waiting for you to say that, but but he may not be the sharpest. May not be the smartest, but he's smart enough to realise that at this moment in time, at this moment in our world, his father has a big role to play. And by doing what he's doing, he's undermining not only his country, not only his father as a father, but the king. Mm-hmm. Now, he always tells us he loves his country. He always tells us he loves the institution of monarchy, although it's critical of what it does. The reality is his father's doing a very important job at the moment, and that should be respected by somebody who, after all, was served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan.
And doing it, and still getting treatment for cancer, and defying it, and just determined that however long he's going to be our king, he's going to make it leave a legacy that's worthy of him.
Yeah, because he is on the world stage at this moment in time. Everyone used to talk about Elizabeth and the second, and yes, she was around. But our king at this moment in time is the most experienced person on the world stage.
I agree.
He leads. He's not only the head of the Commonwealth, which is the third of the world, but he is somebody who I think. He's had conversations going back many, many years with many presidents. He's got great relationships with people in the Arab world. He's got great relationships with people across Europe. He's a very, very eloquent, well-educated man, and you need people like that.
And politicians around the world. He can pick up the phone to any one of them.
And I think that's something that we mustn't undervalue.
You've got to understand.
Yeah. And by being not politically controversial or doing anything kind of controversial, he has that authenticity where other world leaders can speak to him in confidence that it's not going to leak out, etc.
I think a conversation, say, with him and President Trump will have merit. And I think that Trump will listen, whereas he probably wouldn't necessarily to other politicians, because he seems to think he has the power there. But all I would say with him is he's somebody that I think, as you say, what's been the great achievements and highs and lows? Well, actually, I think he's totally risen to the world, despite the cancer, and despite everything that he's done, he's risen to the challenge of being a modern monarch in the 21st century. And actually, he's probably the best suited for that role, given the experience that he has.
I agree. Yeah. Arthur, just on we mentioned about the Queen.
Yeah.
The Queen's been by his side. Remember, the Queen was also crowned at the coronation 2 years ago this week. Has she risen to the challenge?
Oh, I love her. I think she's one of the nicest. Not just because she's the Queen, but she's a really lovely person as well to work with. She's very caring. She obviously, her main concern is her husband. She says if only he would listen to the doctors, just do what he was told, he'd be fine, but you can't tell of someone like that who's got this destiny. And no, she's been absolutely marvellous, and she's taken on a lot that he couldn't do when he was getting the treatment. And she did it with a big smile on her face. And she does everything. Wherever she turns up, she's engaging, she's cheerful. I've never seen her grumpy. I've never seen her anything but positive about her role. And she's embraced it and accepted it. And when you think 20 years ago, when they got married, it was Prince Charles then took a huge chance because, most people thought she was the third person in the marriage, and that she was the result of the breakup of their marriage to Diana, which of course wasn't true. But now she's hugely popular, and it's because of just hard work, just getting her head down and working hard and doing the job, and she's doing it brilliantly. And I mean, she's no youngster, but she's there all the time with him and supporting him. And when they just have these moments when they just talk to each other quietly, that she's totally supporting him, and I've thoroughly enjoyed for the last 20 years working with her as our Queen. She's been an absolute wonderful lady to work with.
Right, and we've just got a couple of minutes to talk about Meghan's latest podcast. No, hang on. No, I'm being told we haven't got time.
Oh, right.
What a shame.
Okay.
There was no one in my ear. I've just decided that myself.
Jam on it.
Yeah. Right, so let's move on. Can we go to... we just got about time for our quick fire questions.
Oh.
Okay, right. So take a deep breath and we'll finish off with these. What was more damaging? The Oprah Winfrey interview, the 6-part Netflix series, Spare, or the BBC interview?
I think the book was the most damaging. I thought for me, it was
the book.
Both the book?
The book. I mean, Oprah Winfrey was all about Meghan, in my view, but the book was about Harry, and Harry is the prince. The book was the most damaging, yeah.
Okay, both the book.
Yeah.
Which 3 royals, past or present, would you like to have a Buckingham Palace tea party with?
Camilla, the Queen. I would love to have, because she's so interesting. She's never lost the common touch, She would relate to everything you could talk about, because she's been there. I'd like, with the Queen.
Just you and the Queen, or 2 others?
Just me and the Queen, yeah.
Yeah.
Me and the Queen, that'd
Robert?
be lovely.
Edward VIII and probably Princess Margaret.
That's quite an eclectic mix there between the 3 of you.
Good luck with that, Rob.
And final question. It was Archie's 6th birthday this week, so what would you have bought him for his birthday?
Archie, I would have probably bought him an iPad so he can get in touch with his cousins on Zoom.
I'd get him an iPhone so he could take some pictures of his face.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, one day, though, I'm sure there's lots of pictures.
I took a picture of his when he was a little baby of his face. I mean, when he was with meeting Bishop Tutu with his mum and dad. I just think there's one thing that I think is daft, but I do think that it'd be sad, isn't it, really, that he doesn't know his cousins.
He doesn't know his cousins.
He doesn't know his granddad, and I think
and his cousins don't know them.
He doesn't know either granddad, does he?
No, and and it'd be lovely to sort of listen to Archie talking to William with his cut glass accent, and Archie with his American accent, them together. It'd just be fabulous, yeah.
But the thing with the whole point there is, I had a really good relationship with my grandfather, and both of them, and he's not had an opportunity to know either grandfather. That's a shocker, in my opinion.
It's terrible, and also it's sad that the king doesn't see his
yeah, exactly.
It is sad.
That's the sad thing.
As we know with the royal family, there are anything can change, and they
let's
often
hope,
very rarely
let's
does.
hope he can get round to say sorry someday.
Yeah.
And
but Arthur picked it up right at the beginning. He said all that film should have been when he did the interview with the BBC. And I thought the BBC were pretty shocking, not actually, questioning him about certain things when he said it was a establishment stitch-up. He should have said, "Can you explain that? Can you justify that? What evidence have you got for that?" I think that it would be, if he'd just gone on the television and said, "I've lost the case, I accept the decision, I'm sorry, Dad, I'd love to come and see you."
Yeah, major missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity, missed opportunity.
Thanks, guys. We've been through a lot. We've done everything we possibly could in the time that was allowed, so I really appreciate having you both on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, well, thanks so much for watching. If you like the show, please leave a comment, because we do read them, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode.